What's up everyone, welcome back. My name is Michael. This is Learning to FPV with me. On today's episode, we're going to talk about my 10 tips for how to practice on the FPV simulator of your choice before you fly for real for the first time. I'm assuming you already have a simulator. If you don't have a simulator and you don't know how to get that all set up, check up here for a video that I did on that specific topic. If not, let's get started. Tip number 1. Fly up high. You want to find a spot or one of the maps or one of the areas in one of your maps where you can fly up high in the open. This will give you a great opportunity to figure out what it's like to bank and learning the various different controls. It'll give you a great sense of how your drone moves and it'll give you enough space in order to feel comfortable doing these maneuvers. Number 2, fly through gaps but from far. What I mean by this is find a gap that you want to fly through, whether that is a gap between containers, a gap in a barn, a door, a window, beneath the trees and the ground, whatever it is, pick something as your target and then spend some time getting to that target. So don't do it from a very close run up, do it from very far so you have enough time to line up yourself with that, making very small, precise changes to your controls in order for you to fly directly through that gap. This will be a very important skill to have, and as you get better you'll be able to shorten that distance between you and the gap and when you come into it. This will be something you're going to use all the time when you get out there. It's something I've been practicing so that I can use it when I get out into the real world. Tip number 3, circle round objects. So what I mean by this is pick something, whether that's a tree, a forklift, a container, a stone, anything really, a building if you want to, and slowly learn how to orbit or circle around that object. This will be, first of all, a very difficult thing to do. You need to be in control of all the different movements and all the different controls and inputs on your transmitter or controller, and this will translate into better control and movement in the real world. Tip number 4, go fast and slow. It's very important to understand how your throttle changes speed, and it's very important to understand how to go fast in certain circumstances and then to go very slow in other circumstances. This will make a lot of sense when you're out in the open and you want to achieve those insanely quick shots down mountains or ravines or through trees, or when you're indoors and you need to fly very slowly, controlled, fluid and cinematically. Tip number 5. Now this kind of links up with all the other tips, but when you're flying, learn to find leading lines and then follow those, whether that is cables or roads or railroad tracks or lines of trees. Leading lines are an important a pillar stone of photography and videography, and it basically means leading lines are the things that your eyes or the human eye and the human perception is led towards. So we like looking down long roads, and the same with your drone. You want to fly your drone down those long sweeping roads and lines because it makes sense visually. Your eyes drawn down towards the end of that, so practice flying down those lines. And that's why things like ridge dives and people flying down railroad tracks, those things look amazing to us because the eye is led down the route upon which the drone is already going to be flying. So tip number 5, leading lines. Tip number 6, very closely linked to tip number 4 above. This one is fly inside. I know I said previously that you should be flying slowly, but flying slowly also helps outside. Flying inside is a whole different kettle of fish because you now have bounded a top and bottom and then very often the side. So you need to be very, very precise in your movements. And you can fly fast and slow in these spaces, but you need to understand what it's like to be confined to a space. So flying inside is super important and something that you'll learn to do only by practicing it in the simulator. It's going to be hard, you're going to crash, but do it and do it over and over and over and over again. Tip number 7, race. Now, I know you didn't sign up for this hobby to race, or maybe you did. If you're a racer, I would definitely suggest you go check out a racing YouTuber. I'm definitely not in this for racing. I'm in this for the cinematography, but I can certainly say that racing helps greatly with that learning curve to getting you to a point where you feel very comfortable with the controls. So pick a track Usually one of the easy or medium tracks are the better ones to go. The hard ones will be very difficult because the targets are super small, but you want to pick a medium track that's relatively long, learn the lines, and then it'll help you with your controls, because you can't get through a racing track if you don't know how to fly a drone. So you'll start going very slowly. It usually gives you a guideline for you to follow along, and that's usually the best way for you to pick up how to do long sweeping movements and be efficient with your flying. Tip number 8, super important for you to practice landing. Now, I know this is probably not something you're expecting to hear, but when you first fly, you'll get up into the air and you'll realize you actually don't know how to land the drone. And often this can be where you break the drone, break parts of it, because landing is something we don't necessarily practice on the simulator. So what I would suggest you doing is learn to come in slowly, controlled, just above the ground, and then drop. In the real world, what you'll find is your drone will bounce quite a bit depending on what surface you land on, whether that's concrete or grass or another type of surface. I would suggest you practice landing. Tip number 9. This one is practice timed battery runs. Now, what I mean by this is when you get out into the real world, you're going to have little battery packs that you fly your drone with, whether those are 4S, 6S, whatever, really, it doesn't really matter, and each of those will kind of have an assumed time, flight time, and you want to make sure that you practice for your assumed flight time. In my case, it's between 3 and 4 minutes, so I set a 4-minute timer, and then I fly in the simulator with a 4-minute timer next to me, so I can kind of remember what it's like to be in the air for 4 minutes. This will help you with, firstly, not flying for too long and draining your batteries too far, and it'll give you a good perception and an extra safety measure, something that you would have had on your DJI drones, and you no longer have that now. You don't have a computer to tell you when to stop. You do have little things in your OSD, in your goggles or something else, but you won't have that beeping. I haven't quite figured out how to make it beep, but you want it to time battery runs so that you can land your drone with enough charge left in your battery so that you haven't damaged them. And then the 10th tip, which I'll give you today, which is something that I've been practicing, is practice the split S. Now, you might be asking, what the hell is the split S? You can see that a split S is used to get into some of the most incredible cinematic shot. I've been spending time in the simulator practicing this, and what I can say is, having now flown in the real world, doing a split S on the simulator and doing it in the real world is quite different, because your brain has to kind of comprehend what's happening in the goggles whilst you sitting stationary. So all the visual input into your eyes is telling you that you're banking upside down or, you know, really at an angle, but you're sitting still or you're standing still. So it's quite a mind to be honest with you. So I would practice the split S, and then just be cognizant that when you get into the real world, the split S is going to feel super weird. Great, so those are 10 tips for you to practice on the simulator. These are ones that I do every single time I get onto the simulator to make the most efficient use of the time that I'm on the simulator. Now, when I'm speaking about time, how long am I spending on the simulator? I don't spend more than 45 minutes on the simulator. I find that anything longer than that, you get tired, frustrated, potentially start making mistakes, and you probably wouldn't be flying for more than half an hour anyway in the real world. So practice as you would do in the real world, and that's really the importance of these 10 points that I've given you here. But thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you around. If you enjoy this video, please like it, drop a comment. I would love to know where you're from, how you got into FPV, or if you're planning on getting into FPV. I do read all the comments. Obviously, I'm a little insignificant tiny channel, so I like to connect with you guys. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. They should make Nesquik a national drink or something. Like, this is Nesquik with oat milk. Ooh. You gotta try it. You gotta try it. You gotta try it.